Hello and welcome to the Devy to Dynasty Film Room podcast hosted by the Matt brothers. We are down one Matt brother this week. Mr. Matt Jackson is out, so me and Rupert are holding down the fort. Matt Rupert, I know last weekend you were celebrating your anniversary. Real quick, how was it? What did y'all do? How many years are you celebrating?
It was phenomenal. It was year 7, which is crazy. Getting awfully close to 10 years. It was great. We went over and got a cabin in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. Got to do a bunch of exploring. Went out with the whole family and in-laws, and they got to watch the kids while we went out on dinner date and got margaritas on the river. It was a good time. We went through like Kate's Cove and did a bunch of other kind of touristy stuff in Pigeon Forge. It was great.
That sounds awesome, man.
Yeah.
We're actually, speaking of 10 years, we're coming up on 10 years ourselves. So January will be 10 years, and we're going to be going on a cruise in December. So I'm looking forward to that. Glad you had a good time. So great to have you back. I'm going to be leaning on you today. A lot of our listeners know this is about me, but my full-time job is I do Christian ministry for college students. And this weekend we had our fall retreat. So that was a ton of fun. But I am exhausted and I was not able to watch as much football as I normally do. So specifically, I did not watch any college football because I was at the retreat all day yesterday. And so today's show, we're going to be fully Dynasty focused. We're going to be talking all NFL. Don't worry, we'll get back to the Devy stuff next week. I did get to watch quite a bit of NFL this afternoon after I got home, and I know you did as well, Rupert. So let's get right into it.
Let's go.
The big game that I want us to talk about, Justin Fields and the Bears offense woke up today. I can't believe I said big game, and then I'm talking about these two teams vying for last place. But one of them had to get a win today, and it ended up being the Broncos. But Justin Fields and the Bears offense, they woke up today in a big way. Fields had his first 300-yard passing game of his career. He threw for 4 touchdowns. He completed 80% of his passes. He looked like a totally different player out there, and he put up a huge fantasy score, mostly with his arm. I mean, he only had 20-something yards rushing. So,
and like no design rushing either.
Yeah, well, that's just continues to be an issue with the coaching staff. Like, how do you not use design rushes for this guy? But he's looked awful this year. This performance came against the same Broncos D that just gave up 70 points to Miami last week. So we got to take it with a little bit of a grain of salt, right? So, Rupert, I know we both have some Fields shares. We even have a team that we co-own where we've got a Fields share. What are you doing with your shares here? Is he a buy, a sell, or a hold for you?
I won't say sell. I'm such a big Fields fan, and I got probably too many copies, which is why I'm wanting to diversify a little bit. I'll probably hold on to some for that upside, but just from what I've seen this year, it's just been a little too scary. The same kind of fundamentals, like with footwork and things like that, that he could work on himself outside of, the facility in the offseason on his own. That's like not something to me that you can blame on poor coaching. Like, I feel like that's something that he could take upon himself with getting his own quarterback coach, guru, whatnot. So that's what's really kind of terrified about me watching Fields this year. It was very encouraging to see today. Like, he did look completely different. He looked so much more comfortable. But, like, how much of that is not getting pressure from the Broncos' pretty pitiful defense? And how much is that, just like is that like a one-game fluke? So if, in the majority of the leagues that I have him, I'm probably going to be shopping him right now. How about you?
Yeah, it's tough for me because the upside is so huge, and we saw how he turned it around last year after a slow start and ended up finishing as a top 10 quarterback and became a first-round startup pick. And so there's a part of me that feels like his value has to bounce back at some point. But my eyes have told me this year that he just doesn't process defenses well enough.
Yeah.
Even in this one, he had a bad fumble return for a touchdown where he held the ball for too long. And that's a recurring theme for him. He takes so many sacks because he just doesn't get the ball out. The infrastructure around him is also really bad. I mean, you mentioned the coaching, the lack of design runs. I mean, even in this one, the coaching staff, they seem in over their heads. You're late in the game. You've driven it into easy chip shot field goal territory. It's tied. The field goal could potentially win you the game, and you're going for it on 4th down. And then not only that, it's 4th and short, and you don't run your rushing quarterback. Like I don't understand. Wow. So they lose this game. He threw a bad interception when they were trying to come back. This was after that coaching decision. So the whole thing just kind of compiling on itself. I mean, they're 0-4. They've also got the Panthers pick, and we're 0-4. So they've got very, very good odds at one of those ended up being the number 1 pick. As of right now, it would be number 1 and number 2. So you got the Caleb Williams kind of looming threat. Yeah. If they get number 1 pick, do they take Caleb Williams? Do they move on from Justin Fields? Where would he end up in that scenario? So I think I agree with you that he's a sell. The question is, what would you take for him, Rupert?
In some of the leagues where I'm looking to offload him, like I'm going to be looking for another like young quarterback. Like I'd probably take a chance on like a Sam Howell, as much as that hurts me to say, him being a former UNC quarterback. I've been like impressed watching Sam this year. So he'd be someone I'd be.
You're saying straight up for Sam Howell. You'd
not straight up. No.
Diversify. No. How much do you need with Sam Howell here?
No. Well, no. Not straight up. No, I'd be looking to get another like young quarterback, and something on top. If I can't, and I'd say that because I feel like it'd be hard to kind of trade up, like trade Fields plus for something right now, unless he has a couple more bounce back games.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's a great question. I feel like I don't want to sell low on a guy where I see the talent and I see the fantasy points and he just came off a top 10 year. I don't know.
QB7 in like all formats, I think.
Yeah. So like, I don't want to sell low on that guy. So just taking like a first and a player feels like low for me, but then I don't know that people want to give a whole lot more than that. So I would put him on the block, see what kind of offers you get coming off of this big game, but don't take peanuts for him. Even though we've both said he's a sell, like I think there's still enough fantasy points being scored here and enough upside that you need to get a good return to move off of him. So
Dynasty is all about finding the most value that you can. So
I think if I got 2 firsts, I would take that.
Even if they're late. Or projected late.
Yeah, I mean, like if one of them's a 25, I think I'll take that chance that that contending team maybe by 2025 is not a contending team anymore, and that it ends up being decently high. So I think I would take the 2 firsts if one was in 2025 and one was 2024. Certainly, if either of them was projected to be like mid-range first. Yeah, and if you could get a player on, like if it was the right player, if it was 1 first, and I don't know, I'm trying to think of an example, not like a super elite asset, but somebody that's you could feel good about starting every week. Maybe if it was like a first in DK Metcalf, something like that.
Yeah.
I would definitely consider moving off of Justin Fields for a price like that. I don't know if people are paying that, but it's worth finding out this week after that big game. So
for sure.
Moving along here to another game and another player that we have on that co-owner team, Najee Harris is a guy that everyone loves to hate. I feel like every time I'm on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it, I see nothing but people clowning on Najee Harris. But he looks good to my eyes whenever I watch him play. Like I feel like I see him breaking tackles, breaking off explosive runs. But the situation is just obviously not good. He's just not producing from a fantasy perspective. You can't count on him. You don't feel good about starting him. Warren is sapping his floor and his ceiling by taking so much of the receiving work. So is this a buy low on the talent situation for you? What are you doing with Najee Harris?
Honestly, I don't want to touch anyone on the Steelers offense as long as Matt Canada is that offense coordinator. I kind of did a deep dive to kind of evaluate if I want to sell all my Najee shares. this past week, and I watched a bunch of Steelers tape and just was disgusted with what I was seeing from that offense. Just like the scheme and the architecture of the offense just doesn't make any sense, especially for the talent. Like you said, like I feel like Najee looks pretty good. I saw some like quips on Twitter, X or whatever, like making jokes about how it looks like he's running slow, but he's still beating guys to the corner. And one of the jokes was it looks like Najee's running in blue jeans, but I'm like, he's so big. It's kind of like Gronk. Like Gronk doesn't look fast, but he beats people. Mm-hmm. And it kind of looked similar to me. So it looks like he still has some speed. He breaks tackles. He has good balance. And I think he has good vision. I just don't think the scheme is, as long as Matt Canada is coordinator there, the scheme is just awful for him. They're running out of shotgun. They're basically trying to do like Miami, like something you would do with like a speed back to get to the edge, like running sweeps out of shotgun. And it's just not.
That's not
what he's doing. They need to run power and play action.
But I actually saw this week he's actually like leading the NFL in explosive plays at the running back position, which kind of blew my mind. And he's better than Warren in basically every efficiency metric right now. So I think my eyes and the underlying numbers are telling me that there's still talent there. But keeping Matt Canada was a baffling decision. I mean, their offense was terrible last year too, and they look terrible now. Kenny Pickett is clearly not it. So it's just a bad situation all around. If I have Najee, though, I'm holding because I still think he's too talented of a player with too big of a workload to trade him for peanuts. And that's all anyone's going to give you at this point is peanuts. So you just can't sell low on a guy like this, in my opinion. I think there's still talent there. I think he's still the lead back. And you mentioned you're out as long as Matt Canada is the offensive coordinator. I don't see any way that he's the offensive coordinator next year. And it's
exactly. I don't think he makes it through the season. I think they're like dead last in pretty much every metric.
Yeah, I mean, like you can't keep a guy around after 2 just abysmal offensive seasons. So I think he's going to be gone. We're playing Dynasty. So I think be patient, play the long game with Najee. Don't sell for peanuts just because you're frustrated with him. So moving on to let's talk some rookies. CJ Stroud is on a historic pace as a passer. And Anthony Richardson looks like a franchise player in his own right. He's putting up more fantasy points in the process because of his rushing. So which of these two stud rookie quarterbacks would you rather have in Dynasty at this point?
That is so tough. It's so tough. You and I both were such huge Stroud truthers, and he's surpassed like everything I thought he was going to do, especially with the what was viewed as the lack of surrounding weapons in Houston after they shipped off Cooks. It's like, oh, you got Nico and this rookie 170-pound receiver as your like top 2 weapons. Like he's not going to do anything, and he's just made them look like studs. He just showed a bunch of poise. So like my heart really wants to go Stroud. I think he'll probably bring He'd probably be like the quarterback more likely, to bring a Super Bowl championship. But for fantasy purposes and, AR's rushing, like I feel like I just have to go Anthony Richardson there.
Yeah, and this may be stubborn coming from me because I had Stroud as my QB1 throughout the process. Just from a longevity standpoint, just feeling like, yeah, Richardson has the cheat code for fantasy, but I think Stroud's a better player. More likely to be a franchise quarterback. Now they both look like franchise quarterbacks, which makes it tough. But I think the fact that we've already seen Anthony Richardson banged up in both of his first 2 starts, he's clearly taking hits that we don't want him to take. Even a couple times this week, I noticed they were in the red zone and they weren't running that quarterback power. And I don't know if it's because they're trying to be more careful with him after he got concussed. So already a concussion this early in his career. Like, I think I'm going to lean Stroud. I think he's going to his body's going to hold up better for the long haul. He's going to have more long-term dynasty success. In the short term, I think Richardson might score you more points, but I think in dynasty, I'm going to still say I'd rather have CJ Stroud. Bijan looks incredible too. If you could do it over knowing what you know now, is Bijan still the rookie 101 for you?
In Superflex, no. In any other format, one quarterback leagues, like for sure, yes.
Yeah, obviously. Superflex. Okay.
Yeah.
Are you taking both of those quarterbacks ahead of him?
Yeah. For sure.
And that's just from a longevity standpoint, like quarterbacks just last longer. It's a scarcer position, less injury prone.
Yep.
I totally get that. I think it's so tough.
It is. I mean, you really can't go wrong.
Yeah, I think I probably would take the quarterbacks ahead of him at this point too, but I mean, Bijan is a true difference maker at his position as well, and he's got a lot of good years in front of him. So, no disrespect to Bijan, but I think if you had told me for sure Anthony Richardson, with all of his rushing upside, is going to look like a franchise quarterback, like he's very capable as a passer. He looks like he has a long career in front of him, and Stroud's going to be breaking rookie passing records with that offense. I think that would move them ahead of Bijan. So moving on here, Rupert, you missed our discussion about A-Chain last week coming off his big breakout game. And I want to hear your thoughts on him for the rest of the season and for Dynasty. Is he an every week plug and play starter the rest of the year in your fantasy lineups? And what would you be willing to give for him in a Dynasty league?
100% plug and play every week. He looks phenomenal. It's everything you would have wanted out of 4-3 speed and Mike McDaniel's offense. His acceleration through the hole into the corner is just unreal. He just eliminates angles that defenders think they have, and he can end up getting extra 15 yards or take it for a touchdown because of that. He's not going to be the workhorse. I just think with McDaniel's offense, he's just going to be so ultra efficient, like plug and play, no doubt. And then, if he breaks those, you never want him to go off for 50 points again on your bench like he did in 3 of my leagues.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's any way. Mostert looked really good today, as he did last week as well. I just want to highlight Mostert had one of the most ridiculous catches I've seen from a running back this week. Going up the sideline, he ended up climbing the ladder to catch it and gets smashed between 2 defenders and still holds on. Like, he's still going to be involved every week. He seems like a perfect player for McDaniel as well. So he's still going to, get his. So there may be some off weeks with A-Chain that you're going to just have to put up with just to make sure you don't miss out on that upside.
So what would you pay for A-Chain in a Dynasty league?
Yeah, I'd definitely send a first for him for sure.
I don't think that gets it done.
Yeah.
I don't think it gets it done. How much more are you willing to pay?
Yeah.
2 firsts?
I wouldn't pay 2 firsts. I'd probably do a first and a second if, as long as it's not early. Yeah, I'd do a first and a second, or like a first and I'm trying to think of somebody. Yeah, I wanted to say David Montgomery, but I feel like he's just going to outproduce his value this year, so I wouldn't trade him for that. But
yeah, I think for me, like it's almost would have to take 2 firsts. Like, if I have him, I don't want to send him for less than 2 firsts. The way he's showing out this early in his career at this age, how explosive he is, the fact that he is an every week plug and play starter. I think to buy him, you have to be a contender. Because even as young as he is, like, you just don't want to buy running backs in a rebuild. And your first is probably going to be early. So you don't want to send an early first for the guy. So I think it's a contender buy. And yeah, only 8 carries today in spite of the big fantasy performance. Mostert's still going to be involved, but he was much more efficient than Mostert with his touches. Mostert did have 2 fumbles. I think we're going to see A-Chain continue to take more and more of the work. He looks incredible. But there's a lot of mouths to feed in that offense. He's not going to keep scoring 2+ touchdowns every week. But he could go for that any given week, so you definitely don't want to leave him on your bench.
Yeah, exactly.
But let's say you, Rupert, you're in a rebuild. He's scoring points that are hurting your hashtag crash for Caleb chances.
Yes.
You're multiple years from contending. You just nailed a late first, early second pick with A-Chain, and someone who's a contender comes and offers you 2 firsts. Both are probably late. Are you taking it?
Yeah. Yeah, I think I would.
Okay.
Just like you said, the value, and like by the time your rebuild's ready, you know, he'll have like a year or two probably left of higher end production. I think
it's so tough to sell a guy that's exploding the way that he is. It just feels gross, and you don't know if you're going to hit on those firsts or not. Whereas, like, bird in the hand versus whatever. I don't know the expression, but you get what I'm saying. It's like it's tough to sell a guy like that, but I think it's the right move in terms of process. But it would be tough to pull the trigger.
Yeah, I think you make the move, and then you just look at it like, hey, you won like the value. You pretty much got a second round pick, then turned it into 2 firsts, like within like 4 games. So
instant profit.
You can still look at it as a win.
So moving on, Cam Akers played his first game for the Vikings, but Madison had his best game of the season. What are you doing with these two in Dynasty?
I'm still selling Madison. He's still average. Like today was his best game by far. He averaged like 5.59 yards a carry or something. Had almost 100 yards on the ground, but he did not look special doing it at all. The Vikings were just opening up gaping holes for him to run through, and he was just getting through them achingly slowly. And then whenever Akers came into the game, I saw him, with burst, getting to the hole, to the edge. I feel like as soon as he kind of gets his head around the offense, he's going to be taking over. So if you have Madison, I would sell him right away for whatever you can get, pretty much. I feel like he's just going to be relegated to a backup again any game now. So if you can get like 2/3 or whatever for him, I'd go ahead and take it. I thought Akers looked good. I don't know where his kind of headspace is and where his, the mental game of understanding his new Vikings playbook is at, but he by far looked like the more talented back there. So I feel like it's just going to be a matter of time before he's taking up majority of the carries.
All right. Hey, I just noticed CFB Nation in the chat. Sorry, I did not see the chat. CFB Nation, what's up, y'all? Love what y'all do. Y'all put out fantastic content. So if you're listening, watching, check out CFB Nation. We love those guys. Thanks for tuning in and engaging with us. So moving on here, I'll comment real quick. I have a little bit of a different take here. I would agree with you about selling Madison. 2/3, sure, whatever, go for it. I'll sell Madison. Cam Akers, though, I'm not buying him. I don't know what's going on with this guy. The history coming off Achilles tear is so bad. You've had so many sell windows, and every time people want to make excuses and hold him, and then look, he's the lead back for the Rams, and the floor just keeps falling out from under him. The fact is, he got beat out by Kyren Williams, and we don't really believe in Kyren Williams either. So,
even though he had another 2 touchdowns,
I know he's killing it in that situation, but
yeah,
I don't know, man. For me, Cam Akers, God has blessed you with another sell window. Please take it. Take it. He might win the job over Madison because Madison is a low bar to clear, and he might have some production this year. But long term, Cam Akers is just not a guy that I believe in. I don't want either of these guys. I think it's probably going to end up turning into a committee that is just gross. So I'm going to disagree with you. I'm going to say sell Madison and sell Cam Akers. I don't want either one on my roster.
I don't mind selling Akers if you can get good value for him. If you can get a second run and take that.
Yeah. Maybe you can't right now, but maybe you wait and he does take that job. As soon as the sell window opens and you can get a second, take it, run with it.
Yeah.
Maybe you try to buy for a third now and sell for a second later if you really think he's going to win that job, but I just don't really want anything to do with the guy. So Let's move on here. Christian McCaffrey, CMC. He is incredible. He's know this. Yeah, he is dominating every single week. He looks like a true difference maker in fantasy. Once again, it's not like we haven't seen it before, but sometimes we get so focused on the buy lows and the breakouts and all that, we don't talk about the studs. We're like, oh, well, we know CMC. He's a stud, so we don't need to talk about him. But I think let's talk about him. Coming off a 4-touchdown game, it's not the time to buy. But I'm curious, Rupert, what would you pay for CMC on a contending team?
Contending team, like especially if it's like a money week where you got some money on the line, easily send 2 firsts for him. I don't care if he's 27 and he's a running back and you think he's going to fall off the cliff in 1 year. He just is the biggest difference maker in fantasy football. Especially like ever since he was traded to 49ers, like he does nothing but score touchdowns every week. And it seems like it's Kyle Shanahan's mission to make him look like the best player and make them look good for that trade. I would trade 2 firsts easy if I'm a contender. I might even pay a little more, to be honest. Don't tell any of my league mates that.
CFB Nation says contending team 3 firsts. Yeah.
I'd consider it.
Honestly, like it probably would take more than 2 firsts to get him. Like it might be 2 firsts plus a player. Are you doing that for a guy who's 27 years old with his injury history? Like we know he's incredible. It's going to be tough to stomach sending 2 firsts and a good player away for Christian McCaffrey. Would you do it?
Yeah, I definitely would. Unless like I had a team makeup where my team's older and I'm going to need those picks. But if I got like a good contending team where I got some young studs that, I don't need those firsts as bad, I would definitely send that away to make a run at the championship.
Yeah, I think first of all, you got to know, am I a real contender?
Yeah.
Or am I a pretender? All right. Because if you are not a locked in top 2 or 3 team in your league and you're sending away first round picks for a 27-year-old running back, you're doing it wrong. Don't lie to yourself. Okay. If you really can contend and you know that first is going to be very late, at least the 2024 first, you don't know about the 2025, but the 24 first is going to be late and CMC puts you over the top. I mean, really at the end of the day, we're in it to win it. So I'm with you on making that move. Flip the script. You're a middling team. You don't think you really have a shot to contend, but you're not in a full rebuild either. You're looking to sell McCaffrey. What's the return that you would take for him? Like how little? I mean, what's the least you would take? I guess is a way I want to ask that. What's the least you'd take for Christian McCaffrey if you're selling him?
I feel like I do feel like I would struggle to take like 2 projected late first. I probably still would take it. Being that, a first 2 years from now, fantasy can come at you fast and you can have a terrible season and end up with someone's, 2nd overall pick or something like that. So I think getting
somebody offers you 2 firsts in that situation, no player involved, just 2 firsts, you'd take it.
I would still struggle to take that. I'd probably try and negotiate more. But if I did think I had a good shot at, Caleb Williams or Marvin Harrison Jr., like with my first round pick and then getting 2 additional ones on top, I probably would end up taking that. Just
maybe you push for like a 2 firsts and Tank Dell or something. Like you're not looking for like Ayuk back in the trade, but you're looking for something that's usable. So, yeah, cool. Well, great discussion. Love it. 30-minute show, all Dynasty. We didn't talk Devy today. We'll be back talking that next week. We're going to get you guys out of here. Matt, tell them where they can find you on Twitter.
At Matthew Rupert FF on X, not Twitter.
On X. Okay. Yeah. I am at Devy2 Dynasty FR. It's the number 2, not TO. And you can find me there on Twitter. That's also the YouTube handle. So if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, it's youtube.com/@Devy2DynastyFR. We will be back here next week, 7:30, just like always, ready to talk Devy and Dynasty. Thanks for watching.
See y'all.